the beauty of thinking for yourself, of being not only a free thinker, but a deep thinker that can see through everything. You know, there's so many layers of deceptions that people have yet to uncover. You know, most people think they're free, but they're really not. You know, and that just emphasizes how enslaved their minds are, to the point that they don't even know that they are in mental prison. You know, when you believe that this reality is all there is to it, you're already in not only mental prison, but spiritual prison as well, because you don't even realize that there is something beyond this so-called realm. You know, like I said, this is a dusty realm. It's very limited. You know, there's not a lot of power that you can attain just relying on this physical existence. You know, when you go deep into yourself, when you really connect with the Most High in a very deep and personal level, you're going to learn so many things about yourself that is amazing. These are things that not even religion can teach you. Religion is another form of control. Well, see, there's different levels of consciousness and awareness, right? Different levels of awakening. We all go through different phases of awakening. So there's some people that you'll have common ground with that, you know, you may not agree with everything, but the reason why we don't agree with everything, it could be that our paths are different. You know, we have a different kind of purpose, but essentially the fundamentals we agree on, right? Like the value system, we could have a similar value system, which is important. You know, that's the core of everything. Like, what kind of values do you have? Do you have good character? Do you value wisdom and knowledge? Do you know what it really means to know the Most High, to connect with Him? You know, that's why I don't waste my time with religious spirits. Religious spirits, they're pretty much, they're gone, you know. But in reality, I think the best way to find the truth is through our own life experiences. People are going to have that experience. You know, the overall ultimate truth will be revealed in due time. So there's no need to rush a person in understanding what you believe to be the truth. There's so much information that we don't even know about yet. I'm still open to learn. I have a willingness to learn, and I don't believe in, you know, badgering a person to believe in what I believe in. So I believe in the Most High God, Yahweh, right? And His Son, Yeshua HaMashiach. That is like that's the core of my faith. There's so many different aspects of our existence that we have yet to understand. In due time, right? There's certain people that are selected to awaken, right? And for some of us, you know, we do what we do, right? We share our insight. We share the knowledge that we've gathered in our life. And then we continuously sharpen each other and we grow. That's the thing about growth. So you don't have to feel bad about not knowing enough, or you feel like you're not as knowledgeable about certain things, because there's some things that I have yet to learn. How do I know? Because I don't even know what else is out there, but I know it is, you know, because there's so many different layers. Like, God is not simple, right? He's a very complex, you know, higher power, you know. And there's people, like I said, I've encountered amazing people that, you know, their view of God, or their perspective on a higher their perspective of a higher power may not actually be God. It could be within them. But there's a little bit of truth to that, because the Bible, or at least biblically from my understanding, is that it does say something about God living within us, and that our temple is the body, and in that body lives the Almighty Spirit. So that is a real thing. So in a way, it's like, you'll notice that some people, it's like they got some stuff we can have common ground with. Like, okay, I allow myself to always have the willingness to learn, because there's always new things that I learn. you know. But I find that with religion, so-called religion, especially when it's like used as when it's used as a tool for indoctrination, I find that there's not much growth going on, especially like when it comes to the spiritual and intellectual life. You don't really grow as much when you just are, you know, when you're following the doctrine of religion. You know, when religion is used as a tool for indoctrination and control, you know, which is basically if you're surrounded by religious spirits, because religious spirits, they're the type of people that are going to say that, oh, you know, they're I like to use this example because they love using this against me. And it's the one where they say, you know, how can you talk about the Lord if you're using foul language? It's like, you don't even know what foul language is, first of all. And I've already made a video about that, so you might want to check that out. I'm going to pin that in the one of the comments of this video, or in the description or whatever. But you got to check that out, because that was I got tired of that. And ever since I made that video, I have not seen these fools pop up with that. You know, they're not coming back with that argument, because like I said, they don't know what foul language is, you know. And if you want to learn more about that, you can check that out. But again, you don't have to agree with me. That's the thing. Like, you know, people are raised under certain mindsets, certain programs, right? And, you know, we're not all going to agree with every single thing, you know. And it's not good to be like that anyway, because that hinders our growth, you know. Like, everyone is going through different stages of evolution, right, in their life. We focus on our path and what we know, and just share it, you know. That's what we do. And our light, people are going to be captivated by our light, right? So, but there are narcissistic religious leaders that they weaponize religion. I mean, they've been weaponizing religion for the longest. We know this, right? Here's the thing, that what I notice is that a lot of religious spirits have the tendency to push good people away from the faith, because now they associate those corrupt actions, they associate that abuse that they've encountered, they associate that with the Most High, right? You know, but a lot of people have been wounded in places that was intended for healing. People have been abused, hurt, and all types of stuff, exploited in systems that disguise themselves as places of light. You know, they claim to represent the Most High, but they misrepresent the Most High time and time again, because they never cared about that. It's all about money. It goes back to that money. You know, they want to have that 501c3. Is that the right term? I think that's what it was. 501c3, whatever. They want to have that tax break, and we know what they do with that money. I mean, come on, right? And we're talking about abusive religious systems, okay? So don't come here with that, my church doesn't do that, I have a good pastor. Okay, good for you. Now, you know, you do you, right? But I don't get too many comments like that, because, you know, people that come to my channel, normally they want, like, they want higher consciousness. They're into higher consciousness. They want greater understanding of things, rather than just being told what to do. Oh, do this, do that. It's like, you can't think for yourself. When it comes to these religious systems, you're not encouraged to do that. You notice that they tend to discourage you from thinking for yourself. You notice that? See, that is very suspicious. For me, it is. Like, the reason why it's suspicious is because one of the best ways to learn, the best ways to retain information, is by asking questions. What do they hate? What do these so-called religious spirits hate the most? Is when you ask questions, right? They immediately use that card of, oh, you can't be questioning God. Why are you questioning God? I'm not questioning God. I'm questioning your level of knowledge on the subject, because you claim to know more than I, and I'm simply asking humbly, so that I can have a greater understanding of why you believe in what you believe in. Why do you, and most importantly, why do you want me to adopt this so-called belief? Because you're going to notice that a lot of these so-called little beliefs that they have is centered around cherry picking scripture, and also using the scripture completely out of context. And one of the biggest ones is the so-called foul language that they love to use. They always they claim that you using curse words, oh, that's foul language according to them, but in reality it's all about the intent behind the words. And again, you do not need to use curse words to verbally annihilate someone. And that also includes gossip as well. Gossip would be included as foul language, which, I mean, who gossips more, right? Who gossips more than a so-called church goer, right? Yeah, there you go. Also, lying and slandering a person, that's also foul language, because that can get a person unalived, and that person could be innocent, you know? That ruins reputations of good people, and God doesn't like that at all. So that also, right? And guess who does most of the gossiping and slandering, you know, while they try to point the finger at you for, you know, saying the word fuck, right? Come on. You know, but anyway, another thing is like these religious systems, for the most part, they discourage independent thought. They discourage, again, asking questions, which when it comes to philosophy, right, it's all about questioning. Like, everything started from a question. So there's no reason for you to have a problem with me asking a question, and it's a respectful question. I'm not acting like an atheist. Like, you know, you could ask a simple question and they get really defensive about it, and it's like that just shows that you lack the wisdom to really elaborate on why you believe in what you believe in, and why should I, right? And you can't really go into depth about it. And a lot of times, if you try to, you're going out of context. It's like you're using what you know, but that's a whole nother thing. But here's the thing: you should not be offended by a person asking questions. If anything, that shows that that person is actually invested into what you're teaching, right? But you notice that, like, even in the school systems, you notice that it's the same thing. It's like they hate when you ask questions, you know, because it's an ego thing. It's like they interpret that as an attack against their ego, and that's not what it's intended to do. Asking a respectful question is intended for me to try to really, I'm trying to get a better understanding of this. I require more depth, you know. That's why I ask, because I want more information so that I can solidify the so-called information that you're teaching me, right? But if you get mad, that shows two things: you really don't have the knowledge to teach, right? Or deep down, you know that what you're teaching is not aligned with truth. It's aligned with what you think is the truth rather than the actual truth. So how do we get to the ultimate truth? And that's the whole point of wisdom, right? Wisdom is important. And that's why I said, even if you don't know the answer, like, it's not the end of the world. That's the whole point of life. The point of life is to continuously, you know, grow until we get to that point where now we got the answer to that one question, or now we understand this. Sometimes you have to have life experiences to go, you have to go through these things to understand the true meaning of this, whatever it is that you didn't understand, right? So there's no need to get so frustrated with not knowing everything, because sometimes you don't, and if you don't, that's okay, right? You could say, hey, I'm not sure, but let me look into it, let me go find out. Or maybe sometimes you need more life experience, or you need to, I don't know, that's why sometimes you got to take a step back and maybe really reevaluate stuff. It doesn't matter how old you are, it happens. That's a part of life. You know, people get so butthurt when they feel like they like I said, they take it like a personal attack when you're asking them a simple question so that you can get better edification on the subject, and then they just get so, like I said, they get butthurt. It's like, it's not an attack on your ego as the teacher. I just want to know more. That's it. And I think another thing too, I think deep down, like I said, some people feel like deep down, especially with these religious systems, they know that there's a lot of information that they're not learning from their so-called church, right? They understand that it literally exposes how much they're not really being fed, right? And that could be another reason why they get triggered. But like I said, just like the school systems, right? And I've experienced this myself, right? In the school systems, they, like I said, you ask a question and they get irritated with you. It's like, why are you mad that I'm asking for clarification on something? You know, and that's the thing. And another thing, I remember there was this idiot, man. This idiot told me, right? I remember he was like, I used to think you were slow because you kept asking questions in class. And then I realized that, wow, you're actually smart. No shit. You know, the most wisest people asked questions. How do you think they became wise? Because they were asking questions. With questions comes answers. And if this person cannot provide me with that answer, what do you think I'm going to do? I'm basically going to search for it one way or another. And sometimes that requires our life experiences to teach us that. You know, because there's certain things that books can't always teach you everything, right? And then, you know, wisdom is something that, like, when you believe in true spirituality, then you understand that wisdom literally can come from the heavens, right? It's divinely guiding you. But you can't talk about that with these individuals because they're so locked into the system. They're so locked into the matrix that they can't even comprehend what that even means. What does it mean to pull wisdom from the sky? You know, it means that that's what happens when you live in the natural world, which a lot of indigenous people, you know, they understand that concept, you know. And thankfully for some of us, we haven't lost that ability, right, to really think for ourselves and really be connected to the earth and really just think. You know, you don't need to see this system, man. It teaches you that you got to have this person telling you this. And you know what? I came to find out, and I don't mean to be, I do not mean to be arrogant when I say this, but I realized that a lot of these so-called teachers, right, from these, you know, from these so-called institutions, they really don't have knowledge like that. And then you start to think to yourself, like, if anything, you end up being the one teaching them because you're asking these questions that they don't even understand what the fuck you're asking. But it's like, well, how can you teach a subject like this? And I'm asking you a question regarding it, but you can't seem to elaborate any further. That means that all you ever did in your whole life was regurgitate information, and then you got a piece of paper, and somehow that makes you think that you're such a genius and that you know everything. And I'm just a student here asking questions, but you don't even understand the questions I'm asking half the time, even though it's relating to the whatever we're discussing. And then they get mad because it emphasizes how much they really don't know, and the fact that how dare you, someone like you is asking a question like that, which clearly indicates that I've done my research outside of class. I am self-taught, and yeah, basically you ain't teach me nothing, in other words. And now I'm asking you this question because you're a live human in front of me teaching me this thing as if you know so much about it. And I'm thinking, if you know so much about it, then I would love for you to explain this to me, right? And then they get mad. And you could be respectful, like I said. I know I sounded like an asshole just a few seconds ago, but seriously, I'm just saying, because, you know, in our lives, we've been made to feel like we're the stupid ones, like we're the ones that are slow. Oh, are you slow? Why you keep asking questions? Well, clearly you don't know the definition of wisdom and philosophy. What is philosophy? The etymological breakdown of the word philosophy is love of wisdom. Okay, so how do you get wisdom? Questioning. The art of philosophy is questioning. So the only way for you to get wisdom is to ask questions, and then eventually things happen in your life, and eventually you're going to understand, wow, okay, that's what that was, right? Or just contemplating. You know, that's the whole point of prayer and meditation. You know, you're thinking about some stuff, you're soul searching. That is how you gain wisdom. You know, a lot of these systems of religion and so-called even education too, if you're a person that is a true knowledge seeker, and you're spiritual on top of that, you're going to realize that a lot of these so-called systems, they're not teaching you anything, because you pretty much, there's nothing they can teach you that you don't already know. Like, you already know about these false religions. You already know about the so-called indoctrination of the schools. What are they teaching you? A lot of times the history is not even real, right? And then what else? You know, it's like, what are you really learning at this point? And then even when you write papers, you know, you write even college papers, you know, they tell you have to cite the source and all this stuff. Okay, how do we know if that source is even true, right? That's another thing. And then what makes it true? What? Because somebody that had a piece of paper wrote an article and that makes it the truth? That person could have a degree, they could have a master's degree and still tell lies, still spread lies about stuff. How do we know if any of this shit is true? And then you want me to quote these people, you know, as if what they're saying is true without me actually verifying if that is so. And then I'm basically simply, all I'm doing when it comes to writing these papers is like, all you're doing is regurgitating what they're saying, and then you summarize what they're saying, and then you talk about what they're saying. So essentially, how the fuck am I learning anything writing a research paper? That's why these so-called research essays, it's so dull, it's so like, it sucks. It takes the joy out of writing, because writing is supposed to be something that is fun, right? Not just fun, but it's something that really is supposed to activate the mind. And I know, because as a writer, that's what happens when I write, you know. And it's not just creative writing. Even if you're writing about, now there's one, I could name one professor in college long time ago. He was a good teacher, because he, you know, and I remember he told me, you know, he's a writer outside, you know, like he likes to write, you know, in his own free time. And so that's why some of the prompts that he would give us actually kind of forced us to actually think for ourselves. And he always wanted us to share, not just quoting, you know, these so-called scholarly sources, but actually thinking about what we're researching, and then having some paragraphs dedicated to what we think about this. You know what I mean? And not many places really do that, because they don't care about what we think. They're only trying to teach us how to regurgitate information. But every blue moon, you'll have at least a professor somewhere that actually encourages critical thought, and that's rare, right? But I remember those people, and you know, those were like the best teachers that I've ever met. So I have to give credit to him, because he was one of them, you know. Because he was really good and had us writing persuasive essays. That's a big one. Persuasive, like, it's kind of like a debate. It's kind of like when you debate, what kind of arguments. So now you have to come up with your own, not only your own thesis, but you have to come up with your own argument, your own points to support the argument. You're actually, basically, in other words, you're actually thinking for yourself, and you're documenting that. You're writing it. You're expressing your thoughts. Like, that's what so-called higher education is supposed to do. But nowadays, it's a joke. It's a joke, man. Because you find yourself being the one that knows more than the damn professor. Isn't that sad? Once upon a time, these professors, they had a lot of knowledge. They actually were passionate about what they were teaching. But now you got teachers that would rather sleep with the students. So-called teachers of today, they're more focused on the flesh, right? You know, even if it gets them fired, they're more focused on that low-level shit than to actually spread knowledge. You know, you got these teachers that will, you got these teachers that would rather spread their legs than to spread knowledge. You know, and I heard that quote somewhere. I think it was, I saw that somewhere. I just thought it was funny to throw that in there, but I read that quote. It's not me. Somebody else came up with it. Credit to whoever came up with those words, because that is brilliant. Okay, yes. And because of that, I mean, that comes with the culture of today. I mean, this society, you know, this is a broken society, is declining for a reason, because people are stuck on stupid. People are stuck on just low vibrational things. Like you're over here, like, these people are concerned about, they're over here trying to sleep with the students. They're not even trying to teach you a fucking thing. Like, what is this? You know, that's how you know that a lot of people are operating off of a low frequency. Like, you know, but anyway, so knowledge, right? You get to a point where because damn near most, especially if you're a person who is like very, man, you're on a whole nother level. And a lot of chosen ones, they're pretty much there. Like, we're pretty much on a whole nother level of intuition, intellect, spirituality, and we're very humble about it too. We don't show it, you know, because we know what comes with that. You know, people start hating and all that, you know. But it's like, you can't even participate in these so-called education, and especially not religious systems. Oh no, because in order for you to participate, you have to subject yourself to their indoctrination. You have to think the way they want you to think, and you're going to notice that. You're going to notice that, because here's an example, right? I remember writing a paper, right, for this one. This is a different course. This was an online course. And I was writing a paper, and I found myself like, wait, I see the mind control going on right now, because I'm quoting somebody. Like, they have you watch what is it? They give you the sources, right, that they want you to pull from, and then, you know, to make a long story short, I found myself quoting the words of somebody that was trying to say that being an entrepreneur is not realistic, you know, that you have to be more realistic with life and get yourself a comfortable 9 to 5, you know. That's basically the gist of it. And I'm like, what the fuck? Of course you want me to quote that. Of course you want me to quote that. Because that way I could be like, yeah, get a job, be a slave, be a wage slave, right? I mean, in today's world, I mean, you can't, where's the jobs at, first of all? I mean, the actual, you know, decent paying jobs. Like, there's a lot of low jobs. Yeah, there's a lot of low paying jobs, of course. But who the fuck is going to be able to live off of 15 an hour nowadays? Hell, some people could barely live off of 20 an hour now, right? But it's crazy because, and I was very disgusted by that, because it's like, it's literally discouraging entrepreneurship. You know, it's trying to say that that's unrealistic. If anything, a fucking 9 to 5 comfortable job is more unrealistic than entrepreneurship. So what are you talking about? And then that's when I realized, like, this is not for me, man. And see, a lot of us, we think outside the box. We are problem solvers. And when you're a problem solver, you're basically, that's you're halfway there to being, basically you're an entrepreneur, because that's what they do. They solve problems. You know, that's all you do all day, every day. And you have your freedom. You can think for yourself, and it's beautiful, right? So there's that, you know. But if you find yourself feeling like all these systems of so-called education and religion, right? If you find yourself feeling like you're not being stimulated at all, like, this is supposed to be higher education. Why is this boring as hell? Like, why do I feel like I'm not learning anything? Because tell me something I don't know, right? And you're going to find yourself thinking that when you're operating off of a high frequency, when you're in a high vibration, you're going to notice that, and you're going to feel like you're wasting your time regurgitating information that is like, you're already above that. Like, you already know this. Like, you've heard of this. And then you may have heard of this, but you know it's not true. So not only do you have me regurgitating information, but you have me regurgitating some stuff that is probably not even true. And sometimes it's really outright not true at all, because being an entrepreneur is one hell of a great investment. You know, you can be self-employed. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? You find a skill, you perfect it, and you go to business for yourself, and you build your clientele base. I mean, that's basically, you know, and I'm not saying it's easy, but it's possible. Like, they make it seem like it's not realistic. That to me is like a form of mind control, right? And see, that's the problem I have with the so-called school system, is that they want to teach you, not only, you're barely learning how to read, write, and you know, arithmetic, right? That's what it was supposed to be. You're barely learning that. And then on top of that, they want to place their agendas in the stuff that they teach, right? The so-called curriculum. And once you know all this stuff and you're constantly evolving, I mean, you're going to see this. I'm going to leave the video here. I think I said enough. I have a lot more to say, though. I really do. So there's going to be more coming in the series Detaching from Control Systems.